Hey there! In this video I will briefly describe how wars work on the popular Minecraft server, Wynncraft. The system is quite simple, not really, and I will describe everything at a beginner level. Special strategies in most builds are trade secret, so you aren't going to be getting any of the good goods from me, unless you are in my guild. But that is not important since the goals for this video are 1. Introducing new players to the war system so that they generally know how things work, and 2. Helping people who watch my other videos understand what's going on when I talk about post 1.20 wars. I have divided all information into the following sections: builds, towers, and economy. I will also include an example at the end of the video so you can see all parts in action. Feel free to skip between sections as needed, but I highly recommend watching everything if you are new. It is also recommended to have the Windtills mod in order to view the map in-game and help you navigate in between territories. Now let's dive in. Unlike most builds in the game, war builds are specially catered towards a team's needs. Solo war builds exist, and are similar to standard builds the way they maximize DPS while having good survivability, but they are not ideal as there are faster and more efficient ways to war. A solo war build will look something like this, but consumables may be necessary to do harder towers by yourself. The two main categories of builds are tank and DPS. The objective of players assigned to the tank role are to be meat shields that eat all of the tower's damage. Healer and tank builds will prioritize raw health, defense, and agility, with heal builds also having enough intelligence and mana regen to infinitely heal cycle. An example of tank builds for each role will look something like this. Guardian is not necessary for casual warring, and a simple HP slap build on any class can be used in the event of multi-hit. But if you have the budget, it is highly recommended for a more relaxed warring experience. The goal for the DPS role is to do as much damage to the tower in as little time as possible. DPS builds prioritize damage and will most of the time ignore survivability since the tower will only be attacking tanks, and a healer will constantly be heal cycling to keep everyone alive. A good DPS build will also have a reliable dodging method, as Tower Aura and Tower Volley can one-shot low health builds. Some examples for DPS builds would be Spell Spam and Tier Stack. I threw in a few unfamiliar terms such as multi, aura, and volley, so now let's shift our focus from war builds and roles to tower stats and how to approach a war. Type/GU attack inside a territory to start a war timer. The first attack will always be free, and attacks will scale in price based on the number of territories you have and the amount of tax between your HQ and the territory you wish to attack. Multiple timers can be started assuming you have the emeralds to queue the attack. Up to 5 players in a guild can be in a single war. So if you are warring with more than 5 people, make sure to coordinate who goes where and have extra people leave the territory before the war starts. Players inside the territory will get teleported to a world where they are introduced to the tower. There is downtime before the war actually starts. This is when you should use any consumables you have prepared for the war. Tank players should be at the base of the tower before the war starts, while DPS players should sit at the edge. This is done so that the tower's main attack targets the tanks and not the DPS. When the war starts and after the tower has selected its targets, the DPS can move in and start damaging the tower accordingly. You will see 4 main stats on the tower: health, defense, damage, and attack speed. There are also 4 hidden upgrades that a tower can have: stronger minions, multi-hit, tower aura, and tower volley. If a tower has aura or volley, you will see a large notification in the middle of your screen when they cast. Each has a unique animation, and players will have to jump at least 1 block high to dodge it. Depending on your jump height or movement ability, the timing can be very lenient. Be careful as it is possible to have your movement cancelled when getting hit by a mob. While both attacks function the same with different timers, Tower Aura covers the base of the tower while Volley covers the edge of the arena. Tower difficulty is generally calculated based on the amount of upgrades it has. Each territory is different and there are always exceptions, but here's a rough estimate of what stats to expect with each difficulty. Territories receive a small buff to health and damage based on the number of connections it has, and the guild HQ receives a buff for all territories within a range of 3 connections. HQ difficulty is calculated differently than regular territories because of its extra perks, and can be misleading, as sometimes a medium or high HQ can be easier than a regular medium territory. You may be asking how a tower gets said upgrades, or how to determine which towers to attack in the first place. What do all these numbers and resources mean? Which brings us to our next and most complicated section. This section is very long and very complicated, so I'm just going to rush through the facts as quickly as possible. If you have any questions, feel free to leave a comment or reach out to me so I can have a one-on-one session with you. Each territory on the map will produce 9,000 emeralds and 3,600 of one of the following resources. Big cities produce double the emeralds, some territories will produce double the resources, and a few special territories will produce less emeralds and resources, but will produce every single type of resource. These resources are required to fund defenses and other bonuses on territories you own. You can view currently owned territories and manage resources through the compass and guild banner or by doing /gu manage. Using Wintils, there is a button to view the guild map, which shows territory connections, what resources a territory produces, and the territory's current defense and treasury. Treasury is a system where the longer a guild owns the territory, the more base resources it produces, and when a territory is taken, the attacking guild is immediately rewarded some of each resource based on the level of treasury the territory had. Now on to upgrades. The guild tower section includes the 4 upgrades that affect a tower's base stats. The territory bonus section is a bit more complicated, so bear with me for a second. The top row are the hidden buffs that a tower can have. The middle row is completely useless for warring and is generally only used when you own a claim for a long period of time. And finally, the bottom row, which are all upgrades that affect the resources within a tower. There is also a tax system for resources in the event that your territories are cut off by another guild. After every successful war, you will need to set your global tax rate as high as possible. You also have the option to close borders on a territory to prevent resources from other guilds to traverse through it and force their resources to reroute. Territories have the option to use the fastest or cheapest route for resources. Taxes stack, so depending on the route being used between the HQ and a territory, it is possible to completely drain or steal all the resources from a territory, forcing a guild to unbuff it. If you have a buffed territory that gets cut off, it is highly advised to remove all upgrades from the cut off territory to avoid draining resources. Since I haven't mentioned it already, you can set a territory as the guild HQ here. Users that are ranked chief or higher in a guild can set and move HQ, while strategists and up can manage all of the upgrades previously stated. All resources are stored inside an HQ and use territory connections to move resources in between owned territories. You can view available resources as well as current production for the entire guild here, and monitor individual territory production here. I have linked the wiki page that explains the cost and scaling of each upgrade in the description. In all honesty, the best way to learn to manage an eco is through experience. I can give you as much information as possible on how the system works, and I rushed through literally everything, so I highly recommend having a veteran ecoer teach you in a hands-on lesson if you want to learn to effectively do it yourself. Or you can just have someone else in your guild eco. I bet a lot of you are still confused on how all of this works, so let's see all of the elements in action through an example raid conducted by your friendly neighborhood Nuggets guild. We started by deciding who we wanted to raid. The guild we ended up picking was the legendary empire known for their warring prowess in the old days, Kingdom Foxes. Fox currently holds Desert Claim, which only has 1 fish territory, so we decided our first move would be to take it. After taking the territory, we wanted to strengthen our HQ by increasing its number of connections, so we headed to Desert East Lower, one of Fox's HQ cons. We failed. Twice. So before our HQ was off cooldown, we decided to take the wood territory Desert East Upper. Knowing we couldn't take any of Fox's HQ cons because of our lack of members, we decided to shift our focus to the Rymek region. Rymek East and West Upper were the first territories to fall. Fox was forced to undefend the rest of their southern territories to avoid feeding us resources. During this process, our HQ was taken, and we assigned Rymek West Upper to be our new HQ. We swept the rest of Rymek as all the territories were now very low and started to set up our eco. Since our mini-claim had no fish and wood, it was essential to boost our rainbow territory as much as possible so that we could have a decent amount of every resource. Since most of our territories were crop and ore, we used the excess resources to boost emerald generation in order to fund our beefed up rainbow territory. Our economy was now stable and our territories were pretty well defended. However, Chickenfinity and I were the only ones warring, and we were starting to get outpaced by Fox. Knowing we couldn't take Fox's HQ cons and make a dent in their eco without going in circles, we decided to stop. I hope this information inspires you to try warring with your friends. If you enjoyed the video and would like to see more of my content, I would appreciate if you hit the subscribe button and followed my Twitch account. The war system is very complicated and I intentionally left several things out, but if you have questions, don't forget to ask in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see y'all around.